Welcome back to Part Built Campervan. Um, in the last video, I set up a question, which was how on earth can we get the sun to give us more of its energy in a campervan than to have the solar panels flat on the roof? Well, this episode is when I'm going to tell you what I think is one, at least part, answer. So let's see what you think of this. This is the front of my campervan. Apparently, you're supposed to have a name for your camper van, so I've called mine Harrison. So this is Harrison's face. What can we do to get more power from the sun? We can stick a solar panel on Harrison's forehead. How's that? Does it look daft? I'm not sure. I did think it would look daft, but I am not so sure that it does look daft now that I've done it. There it is in a car park. Um, Looks a bit unusual, I suppose, but not all of that. Here it is parked near the seaside, and again looks a bit unusual. But you can see here, particularly when you notice the shadow of the van, that the sun is hitting the panel, which was the intention, probably almost square on. This is looking across the top of the panel because I thought I'd better point out that because of the curvature of Harrison's forehead, and the fact that the planes go in two different directions, you can't get the panel to sit completely flat on the forehead. Um, so you end up with this sort of bulge at the top. But it seems to be fine. I've driven it over 80 miles an hour now, and it's not a problem. You might be able to just detect in there that I put a sort of a big blob of the adhesive right in the middle of that area just to support it in the middle. And I don't think it really has any problems. So the problem that it has caused me is that I had a Bluetti, which is the big one in the back there, which I now call Mum or Mother. And that's one of the very early Bluettis. And it's so early that it doesn't have the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi app to go along with it. So you have to control it from physically tapping the screen on it, which is more than a little annoying, I must say. Um, I don't think it always tells the truth about the percentage of power that it has in it, but I seem to sort of get by reasonably well with it, if only I could get some more electricity into it. But at the moment, the 800 watts on the roof are plumbed into Mother or Mum, and you can see videos elsewhere on YouTube where there are lots of electricians and people who know about this stuff who will tell you that you can't really patch in another solar panel into the same system, whether it's series, parallel, or whatever the mixture is, um, without causing a problem in terms of the actual number of watts that you can get. But that's way beyond the scope of this video. So I decided the solution was to buy a much smaller Bluetti, which is the AC50B that you can see there. Down in there it says AC50B. Um, and whereas Mum has can put out 2,000 watts and it can hold 2,000 watt hours, the baby one can put out 700 watts but it can only hold 448 watt hours. So it's a good bit less than a quarter of the capacity to hold energy, um, compared to the AC 200P, which is the older Bluetti. But the big advantage of the smaller one is that you can use the app on your phone to see what it's doing, what it's up to, and to control it to a very significant degree. Now, the panel on Harrison's forehead is 180 watts, so it's a good bit less than a quarter of what is on the roof, and that will become significant later. Now, here you can see the app, the Bluetti app, and at the top you'll see the name of the generator that we're looking at in detail is Baby. So this was during some testing that I was doing, and it also kind of gives away another part of the plan, as it were. In the bottom right there, you can see that it says 515 watts. Well, that's 515 watts going out of Baby. And it's actually going out of Baby because it's being used to charge Mum. So Mum's getting a charge from Baby. Baby's currently at 75%, as you can see in the middle. In the To the left of where it's got 515 watts, you've got the DC output. I don't actually remember what was plugged in at the time. It just jumped from 26 to 27 watts. Um, but in the top left-hand corner, you've got the number of watts coming in from the solar panel. That's the solar panel that's on the forehead of Harrison. And so 112, 109, 107, 111, that's constantly updating, telling you how many watts of power are coming in. You can also lower down from the app, turn on or off either the AC or the DC. And so that means that if I've got everything plugged in and ready to go, and let's say Baby gets to 95% full, then I can decant a great deal of that energy out into Mum simply by turning the AC on, because that then turns on the charger for Mum. In the next video, I'm going to show you the results of some rather unscientific testing, but nonetheless real world testing. But this is just by way of a teaser to what we might be seeing in the results of that testing. I went shopping the other day, and when I pulled into the car park, I realised that the clouds were breaking and the sun was coming through. And so I deliberately parked where I would be able to catch as much of that sun as I could onto Harrison's forehead. And what I found was that when I went into the van to see what was going in, it was 231 watts that was going into the solar panels from the roof. So Mum was getting 231 watts. That's 28.8% of the 800 watts of panels that are up on the roof. But then when we looked at the app, when we looked at Baby itself, the actual screen on Baby, Baby was getting 135 watts from exactly the same sun. And that meant 75% of the 180 watts that the forehead solar panel is capable of, um, which obviously is a much greater performance. And bearing in mind it's 180 watts, even if you, I mean, you haven't got room to put two of them there, but if you could double that, then instead of getting 135, you'd be getting 270. And yet 800 watts on the roof is nowhere near 270 anyway. So it was looking promising that we might get some good results. And I think this picture works quite well in sort of depicting the fact that the sun is coming down at this angle. And so it's almost sort of bouncing off. You can think of it as the flat panels, but it's almost crashing into the solar panel. Anyway, few other points to point out. I was doing a house sit here. I do quite a few house sits for people when they're on holiday and for other reasons. Anyway, where I could park, which was on this driveway, there was a tree. So in the morning when you got up, the shadow from the tree was all over the forehead um, solar panel. Handy also, if you look at the shadow cast by the trunk of the tree, that gives you an idea of the angle of the sun. So the sun is sort of coming down through the tree and hitting Harrison. And also giving all that shading. Something else you could find videos on YouTube about is lots of electricians telling you that if you get shade on a panel, then the whole panel does hardly anything. I think that was more true a few years ago. It's less true now. It doesn't mean it's not true anymore, but I think it's less true because when we see the results of the testing while this shading was on there, I think you'll understand that it's not as bad as it used to be. There's a more close-up picture of the shading on the panel, and you can see that, the panel is not going to perform at its best with that much shading on it. Another couple of things to mention during the testing, I'm most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, I'm running my fridge off mum, which is about 45 watts when the fridge kicks in. So the fridge has a duty cycle. It's when it actually kicks in, it's using 45 watts. And then I also, for some of the time, charged my Ryobi batteries for my Ryobi power tools, and that will all come out in the testing in the next video. So if you look down in the description below, you should be able to see how you can buy me a coffee if you'd like to. If you think what I'm doing is worthwhile and you want me to keep doing it, and maybe get things done quicker even, then please do buy me a coffee. If you found out something worth knowing, or if you learnt something, then please do feel free to buy me a coffee. As the woman said as she peed in the ocean, every little helps.